In 2000, a newlywed couple vanished overnight from a romantic cabin on the Oregon coast. Dinner sat half-eaten on the table. A fire still burned in the hearth, but scratched into the bathroom wall were the words, "He can hear us." 24 years later, when a storm tore off the cabin's outer siding, it revealed a network of hidden corridors inside the walls that no one knew existed. July 22, 2000. Location: Cannon Beach, Oregon. The last person to see Emily and Marcus Chen alive was the real estate agent who rented them the cabin. She didn't remember much, just that the fog was thick, the kind of fog that made everything feel muffled and close, like the world had shrunk to just a few feet in every direction. She was in her early 50s, working weekends for Coastal Rentals Company, handling vacation properties along Highway 101. Cabin number 47, Driftwood Point, was a last-minute booking. 2 guests, 1 couple, paid half in cash, half by check. She met them at 3:47 p.m. to hand over the keys. They seemed happy. Emily wore a thin blue cardigan with small pearl buttons. Marcus carried their bags, a navy duffel, and a brown leather weekender with brass clasps. The agent showed them the thermostat, pointed out the firewood stacked on the back porch, reminded them checkout was 11 a.m. Sunday. They thanked her. She left. 2 days later, when they didn't check out and didn't answer the phone, she drove back up the gravel road and found the door unlocked. Everything inside looked normal at first. The lights were off. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke, and something sharper, bleach maybe. The dining table had 2 plates, forks resting beside them, a wine bottle tipped on its side, red pooling into the grain of the wood. The fire in the hearth had burned down to ash, but the poker lay on the floor, handle up. She walked through the small living room into the narrow hallway. The bedroom door was open. The bed was made. Emily's cardigan hung on the back of a chair. Marcus's shoes sat by the closet, laces still tied. But when she stepped into the bathroom, she froze. The mirror above the sink was cracked, a single line running diagonally from corner to corner. Beneath it, someone had used something sharp to carve into the drywall. "He can hear us." The letters were uneven, frantic. Her hand went to her mouth. She backed out of the room, locked the cabin from the outside, and called the sheriff. Lincoln County Sheriff's Office arrived within the hour. Deputies searched the cabin top to bottom. No signs of forced entry. No blood. No bodies. Just 2 missing people and a house that felt like it had been holding its breath. Emily and Marcus Chen, married 8 months. No children, no criminal records, no outstanding debts. They'd driven up from Eugene for their anniversary. A quiet weekend. Ocean views. Time alone. Gone. The investigation stalled within a week. No witnesses. No vehicle activity after their arrival. The Chen's car, a silver Honda Accord, was still parked beside the cabin, keys on the kitchen counter. Their wallets, their phones, even Emily's wedding ring, all left behind. The only thing missing was a small handheld camcorder Marcus had brought to film the trip. The sheriff's report noted the scratched message in the bathroom, but attributed it to possible drug use or a mental health episode. The case went cold by August. The cabin went back on the rental market the following spring after minor repairs, a fresh coat of paint, and a discounted rate that promised seclusion and stunning coastal sunsets. Most renters had no complaints, but some left reviews mentioning strange sounds. A man in 2004 said he heard footsteps inside the walls at night. A couple in 2009 reported a faint whispering sound coming from the heating vents. One woman in 2015 refused to stay a second night. She told the property manager she'd seen a face in the bathroom mirror, a woman's face, mouth open, eyes wide, gone in a blink. In February 2024, the cabin was purchased by David Ortega, a 41-year-old architect from Portland. He'd been looking for a weekend project, something he could restore and flip. The listing called it a fixer-upper. Charming bones, needs TLC. The agent didn't mention the Chens. David didn't ask. He moved in with his tools, his dog, and a 6-month renovation plan. 3 weeks later, a winter storm hit the coast. Winds clocked at 68 miles per hour. Rain came sideways. When David went outside the next morning to check for damage, he found a section of the cabin's exterior siding had been torn clean off. Underneath, between the outer wall and the inner frame, was a gap, not insulation, not wiring. A space, a narrow corridor, just wide enough for a person to stand. David stared at it. Then he grabbed his flashlight and called the contractor. March 4th, 2024. Location, Cannon Beach, Oregon. The first time David Ortega shone his flashlight into the gap behind the siding, he thought it was a structural mistake. Old cabins like this one, built in the late 70s, sometimes had weird voids where builders cut corners or didn't plan for future renovations. But this wasn't a void. It was deliberate. The space ran vertically between 2 wall studs, sealed on both sides by sheets of plywood. And at the bottom, near the foundation, there was a small hinged panel, like a pet door, but no pet had used it. David crouched down and pulled the panel open. Cold air rushed out, damp and stale. He aimed the light inside. The beam caught dust motes, cobwebs, and then something else. A woman's sneaker, white canvas, dirt-stained, laces untied. He pulled his hand back and stood up slowly. His dog, a black lab named Bix, sniffed at the opening and whined. David took out his phone and dialed the contractor. When the man didn't pick up, he called the sheriff instead. By noon, the cabin was a crime scene again. Yellow tape stretched across the driveway. 2 forensic vans parked in the gravel lot. Detective Angela Ruiz stood in the living room, hands on her hips, watching her team pull apart the walls. She was in her late 40s, compact and sharp-eyed, with short gray hair and a voice that didn't waste words. She'd been with Lincoln County for 19 years. She remembered the Chen case. She'd been a deputy back then, one of the first responders. She remembered the scratched message. She remembered the wine bottle. And now, standing in the same cabin, almost a quarter-century later, she felt the same unease she'd felt the first time. David stood near the door, arms crossed, trying not to get in the way. Ruiz walked over. "You find anything else?" she asked. He shook his head. "Just the shoe." "I didn't touch it." She nodded. "Good." She turned toward the wall where the hidden corridor had been exposed. Her team had already removed several more panels. What they found wasn't just one corridor. It was a network, narrow passages running behind the bathroom, the bedroom, even the kitchen. Some led to dead ends. Others connected to small chambers, box-like spaces barely big enough to crouch in. And in one of those chambers, tucked into the corner beneath a layer of fiberglass insulation, they found a backpack, navy canvas, zippers rusted shut. Ruiz pulled on gloves and carefully unzipped it. Inside, a wallet with Emily Chen's driver's license, a spiral notebook with water-damaged pages, a disposable camera still loaded with film, and a keychain shaped like a tiny lighthouse. She stared at the license photo. Emily's face, smiling, younger. Gone for 24 years. Ruiz exhaled slowly. "We need to map this entire structure," she said. "Every wall, every void. If there's one backpack, there might be more." By evening, the forensic team had documented 11 separate hidden spaces within the cabin's walls. Most were empty. But in the corridor behind the bathroom, they found something that changed everything. Scratched into the wood framing at shoulder height were dozens of tally marks. Below them, a single sentence carved in small, shaky letters. Day 9. He hasn't come back yet. We're trying the vent. Ruiz photographed it, then stood back and stared. "They were alive," she said quietly. For at least 9 days, David, still standing nearby, felt his stomach turn. Who keeps people in their own walls? Ruiz didn't answer, but she knew. Someone who didn't want them to leave. Someone who wanted them close. That night, Ruiz sat in her office at the sheriff's station. The Chen case file spread across her desk. It was thinner than it should have been. 2 missing persons, no bodies, no evidence of foul play, just photographs, witness statements, and a list of oddities. Oddity 1. The couple's luggage was packed and sitting by the front door, as if they'd been planning to leave early. Oddity 2. The thermostat had been turned down to 58 degrees Fahrenheit, but it was mid-July. Oddity 3. A faint chemical smell near the bathroom drain, but no samples were collected. Ruiz flipped to the last page. There was a handwritten note from the original lead detective, now retired. Property owner, uncooperative, refused full search of attic and basement, case suspended pending new evidence. She tapped her pen against the page. The property owner in 2000 had been a man named Leonard Schiff. He'd managed the cabin for a rental company and lived in a house 2 miles down the coast. Ruiz pulled up his records. No criminal history, no red flags. But in 2003, he'd sold all his properties and moved out of state. No forwarding address. No tax filings after 2004. She wrote his name on a sticky note and pressed it to the edge of her desk. Then she opened the evidence bag containing Emily's notebook. The pages were brittle, some stuck together, but a few entries were still legible. She read the first one aloud, just to herself, just to hear the words. July 22nd, 2000. First night in the cabin. Marcus made a fire. We drank wine on the porch and watched the fog roll in. I feel like we're the only 2 people in the world. It's perfect. Ruiz turned the page. The next entry was dated 2 days later. The handwriting was different, faster, messier. July 24th. Something's wrong. I woke up and Marcus wasn't in bed. I found him standing in the bathroom staring at the wall. When I asked what he was doing, he said he heard someone walking, but we're alone. I checked every room. No one's here. I think he's just tired. Or maybe I am. Ruiz kept reading. The entries got shorter, more desperate. July 25th. The door won't open. We tried everything. Marcus thinks it's jammed, but I don't. Someone locked it from the outside. We can hear footsteps. Slow, deliberate, like someone pacing back and forth in a hallway we can't see. The final entry was barely a sentence, scrawled at an angle across the bottom of the page. He's inside the walls. Ruiz closed the notebook and sat in silence. Then she picked up her phone and called the forensic lab. I need you to pull DNA from that shoe, she said, and I need it fast. March 5th, 2024. Location: Lincoln County Forensic Lab, Newport, Oregon. The shoe belonged to Emily Chen. DNA extracted from skin cells inside the canvas matched samples taken from her parents' home in 2000. Items she'd touched: a hairbrush, a coffee mug. Things her mother couldn't bring herself to throw away. The lab also found something else: soil particles embedded in the rubber sole. The composition didn't match anything outside the cabin. It matched the crawl space beneath the foundation. Emily had been under the house. Detective Ruiz stood in the lab's sterile white room, staring at the analysis report on the screen. The soil sample showed traces of creosote, fiberglass insulation fibers, and something unusual: oxidized iron particles consistent with old nails or metal hardware. She turned to the forensic technician. How long would she have had to be down there for this much contamination? The tech adjusted her glasses. Hours at minimum. Possibly days. Ruiz's jaw tightened. So she wasn't just hiding, she was trapped. David Ortega had been staying at a motel 3 miles down Highway 101 since the cabin was sealed. He couldn't stop thinking about the walls, the shoe, the notebook. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that narrow corridor, imagined someone crouched inside it, listening. He'd bought the cabin to flip it, to make something beautiful. Now, it felt like he'd uncovered a tomb. When Ruiz called and asked him to meet her at the property, he drove back immediately. The cabin looked different in daylight. Stripped of its siding, sections of the frame exposed. It resembled a skeleton, Ruiz met him in the driveway. "We need to go underneath," she said. David frowned. "The crawl space." She nodded. "Your contractor said, there's an access panel in the utility closet. We're going in." The crawl space was low, maybe 3 feet of clearance, dirt floor, wooden support beams running the length of the foundation. Ruiz went first. Flashlight in one hand, camera in the other. David followed, knees scraping against the uneven ground. The air smelled like rot and rust. After about 15 feet, Ruiz stopped. Her light had caught something. A section of the dirt floor looked different, darker, more compacted. She brushed away the top layer with her gloved hand. Beneath it, fabric, a piece of torn cloth, faded denim. She kept digging, more fabric. Then something hard, plastic. She pulled it free. A water bottle, empty, label peeled off, but the cap was still screwed on tight. Inside, rolled up and pressed against the plastic, was a piece of paper. Ruiz unscrewed the cap carefully and pulled the paper out. It was a receipt, faded, water-stained, but still readable. Date, July 26, 2000. Location, Seaside Hardware, 12 miles north. Items purchased: 50 feet of nylon rope, a roll of duct tape, 2 padlocks, and a handheld drill. The name on the credit card receipt, Leonard Schiff. David stared at it. "That's 4 days after they checked in." Ruiz nodded slowly. "He bought supplies while they were inside." Back at the station, Ruiz pulled everything she could find on Leonard Schiff: birth records, employment history, property deeds, vehicle registrations. He'd been born in Portland in 1954, worked as a maintenance supervisor for Coastal Rentals from 1987 to 2002, owned 3 properties along the coast, and then disappeared. No death certificate, no Social Security activity after 2004, no credit card use, no known relatives. But there was one detail that stood out. In 1999, Schiff had filed a building permit application for Cabin 47 Driftwood Point. The project description: interior wall reinforcement and ventilation upgrades. The permit had been approved without inspection. Ruiz drove to the county records office and requested the original permit file. Inside, she found hand-drawn blueprints. They showed the cabin's existing layout, but in red ink, someone had sketched additional lines, corridors, small chambers, access panels hidden behind closets and baseboards. At the bottom of the page, in neat handwriting, observation passages, soundproofing required. She photographed every page and sent them to the forensic team. By that evening, they'd confirmed it. The hidden corridors in the cabin matched the blueprints exactly. Schiff hadn't just modified the cabin, he'd designed it. He'd built a surveillance system inside the walls, a way to move through the house unseen, to watch, to wait, to control. March 6, 2024. Location: Cannon Beach, Oregon. The search expanded. Cadaver dogs were brought in to sweep the property, the crawl space, the surrounding woods, near the back corner of the foundation. One of the dogs alerted. The handler marked the spot with a flag. Excavation began at dawn. By 10:30 a.m., they'd uncovered a metal box, rusted, locked with a combination padlock. Bolt cutters made quick work of it. Inside, a handheld camcorder, the same model Marcus Chen had brought on the trip. The lens was cracked, the casing dented, but the tape inside was intact. Ruiz took it to the lab. The tape was digitized and cleaned. When she hit play, static filled the screen for several seconds. Then, the image stabilized. It showed the inside of the cabin, shaky handheld footage. Marcus's voice, slightly distorted. July 23rd, around 9 p.m. "Emily and I just got back from the beach. We're going to open some wine and relax. This place is incredible." The camera panned across the living room, lingered on Emily sitting by the fire, then cut to black. The next segment picked up hours later. The timestamp read 2:14 a.m. The camera was angled low, propped on something, maybe the floor. The image showed the hallway. Dark, grainy, Marcus's voice, whisper quiet. Something woke us up. Footsteps, I think. Emily's scared. I'm checking the doors. The camera moved, jostled, swung toward the front door. It was closed, deadbolt locked. Then toward the back door, also locked. The camera turned toward the bathroom. The door was open. Inside, barely visible in the dim light, a shadow moved across the mirror. Marcus's breath caught. Did you see that? Emily's voice, off camera, trembling. Marcus, don't. The camera moved closer. The bathroom was empty. But the mirror, it reflected something behind Marcus, a figure standing in the hallway. Tall. Still. The camera spun around. No one there. The footage cut to black. Ruiz watched it 3 more times. Each time the figure in the mirror was clearer. A man, late 40s, wearing a dark jacket. She paused the frame and zoomed in. The face was partially obscured, but the build, the posture, it matched descriptions of Leonard Schiff from old rental company records. The final segment on the tape was the longest. Timestamp July 26, 6:47 a.m. The camera sat on the dining table, aimed at the front door. Marcus's voice, hoarse, desperate. We've been locked in for 2 days. The doors won't open. Windows are sealed from the outside. We tried breaking one, but there's metal grating behind the glass. We can hear him. He walks around the cabin just outside, sometimes inside the walls. We found a gap behind the bathroom mirror. Emily thinks we can crawl through. If anyone finds this, our names are Emily and Marcus Chen. We're from Eugene. Tell our families we tried. The camera stayed on the door for another 40 seconds. Then, faint footsteps. Slow, deliberate. The door handle turned. The lock clicked. The door opened. A man stepped inside. The camera angle only caught his legs, dark jeans, work boots. His voice, calm, almost gentle. You shouldn't have tried the mirror. The screen went black. The tape ended. Ruiz sat in silence. Then she called the FBI. March 7th, 2024. Location, Portland, Oregon, FBI Field Office. Special Agent Ethan Morse reviewed the case files, the blueprints, the camcorder footage, the receipt, everything Ruiz had compiled. He was in his early 50s, gray-haired, methodical, with 20 years in the Bureau's Violent Crimes Unit. He'd seen cases like this before. Not identical, but similar. Predators who built environments of control, who isolated victims, who extended captivity not through force but through architecture. This is organized behavior, Morse said, spreading the blueprints across the conference table. He didn't abduct them off the street. He lured them into a space he'd already prepared. The hidden corridors gave him access without detection. The soundproofing ensured no one outside would hear. And the camcorder, he took it because it had evidence. Ruiz leaned forward. So why bury it? Morse tapped the photo of the metal box. Trophies. He couldn't destroy it, but he couldn't keep it where it might be found. So he buried it close, where he could come back. He looked up. Has anyone checked if Schiff owned other properties? Ruiz nodded. 3 cabins along the coast, all sold in 2002 and 2003. Morse pulled up a map on his laptop. We need to search all of them. By that evening, FBI teams had been dispatched to 2 other former Schiff properties, one in Manzanita, one in Yachets. Both had been renovated and resold multiple times. But when structural engineers examined the walls, they found the same modifications, hidden corridors, soundproofed chambers, observation panels. In the Manzanita property, they found a second backpack, this one containing a driver's license for a woman named Rachel I. Piz, reported missing in 1998. In Yachets, behind a false wall in the attic, they found a box of Polaroid photographs, dozens of them. Different people, different locations, all taken from inside walls, through vents, behind mirrors. Ruiz stared at the evidence board back in her office. 3 properties, multiple victims, a pattern spanning years. Schiff hadn't just built one trap, he'd built several, and somewhere, he was still out there. March 8th. 2024. Location: Cannon Beach, Oregon. David Ortega returned to the cabin one last time before it was scheduled for demolition. He walked through the stripped frame, past the exposed corridors, the empty chambers. He stopped in the bathroom, where Emily's message had been scratched into the wall. "He can hear us." He ran his fingers over the letters, feeling the depth of the cuts, the desperation. Then he noticed something he'd missed before. Just below the message, barely visible, another set of scratches, smaller, neater. He leaned closer. It was a number. A phone number, carved digit by digit. 503-555-0147. He took a photo and sent it to Ruiz. She called him back within minutes. "That's a Portland area code. I'm running it now." 10 minutes later she called again. It was a payphone, located outside a diner in Seaside. Disconnected in 2006. David frowned. Why would she carve a payphone number? Ruiz was quiet for a moment. Then, because she knew someone was listening, and she wanted them to know she'd reached out. Records showed that on July 27, 2000 at 11:52 p.m., a call was made from that payphone to Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. Duration 14 seconds. The dispatcher noted it as a hang-up, possible pocket dial. No follow-up. Ruiz pulled the original call log. There was an audio recording, archived, barely audible. She played it, static, breathing. Then a woman's voice, faint, broken. "Please, we're at Driftwood Point, cabin 47, he won't let us." The line cut. Ruiz closed her eyes. They'd called, they'd tried, and no one came. March 9, 2024. Location: Seaside, Oregon. The diner was still there, weathered, faded, but operational. The payphone was long gone, replaced by a cigarette vending machine that didn't work. Detective Ruiz sat in a corner booth, nursing black coffee, waiting for the owner. When he finally shuffled over, apron stained, reading glasses perched on his forehead, she showed him a photo of Leonard Schiff from 1999. He squinted at it, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, I remember him. Quiet guy. Used to come in late, always ordered the same thing. Coffee, toast, nothing else. Sat by the window, read the paper." Rubens leaned forward. "Did he ever use the payphone?" The owner scratched his jaw. "Everyone used that phone back then. But yeah, I remember him using it. Sometimes he'd be on it for a while, just standing there, not really talking, just holding the receiver." He paused. "One time, maybe summer 2000, he made a call and then just left the phone hanging. Didn't hang it up. I had to go out and do it myself." Rubens felt her pulse quicken. "Do you remember what day?" He shrugged. "July, maybe late July. It was busy, tourist season." She pulled out her notepad. July 27, 2000. The same night, Emily called for help. Schiff had been at the diner, close enough to intercept, close enough to know. Back at the cabin site, forensic teams had moved to the attic, the last area that hadn't been fully searched. The access hatch was narrow, barely wide enough for one person. Inside, the air was stifling, thick with dust and the smell of old wood. The team leader, a compact woman named Torres, swept her flashlight across the beams. Most of the attic was empty. Insulation, some old boxes, a broken chair. But in the far corner, tucked beneath a section of loose plywood, she found something that made her stop. A briefcase. Old, leather, handle cracked. She pulled it out carefully and carried it down. Ruiz opened it on the hood of her car. Inside, a stack of rental agreements, all signed by different names but in the same handwriting. Beneath them, a ledger, dates, and entries spanning from 1996 to 2001. Each entry listed a property, a guest name, and a single word next to it. Unsuitable. Promising. Declined. Next to Emily and Marcus Chen's names. Selected. There were other names too. Rachel Pyers, 1998, Manzanita property, marked selected. Thomas and Ann Gerard, 1999, Yachit's property, marked declined. Another couple, Kevin and Natasha Brown. 2001, same Yachit's property, marked suitable. Ruiz, cross-referenced the names with missing persons databases. Rachel Pyers, still missing. The Gerards, no record, likely left safely. The Browns reported missing August 2001, last seen checking into a coastal rental, case unsolved. Ruiz stared at the ledger. This wasn't opportunistic. It was methodical. Schiff had been selecting victims for years, watching them, evaluating them, deciding who would fit his design. March 10, 2024. Location: Lincoln County Sheriff's Office, Newport, Oregon. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit sent over a preliminary profile. Male, late 40s to early 60s at time of offenses, likely employed in property management or construction. High need for control, voyeuristic tendencies. Prefers victims who are isolated, transient, unlikely to be immediately missed. Methodical, patient, probably has a history of escalation, starting with observation, progressing to confinement. Agent Morse added his own notes during a video call with Ruiz. He engineered these spaces because he wanted prolonged access. He wasn't interested in quick violence. He wanted submission, watching them realize they couldn't escape. That's the goal. Ruiz rubbed her temples. So where is he now? Morse leaned back. Men like this don't stop unless they're forced to. He sold the properties and disappeared in the early 2000s, which means something changed. Either he got spooked, or he relocated. Ruiz pulled up a map of Oregon and Washington. If he stayed in the region, he'd need another property, somewhere remote. Morse nodded. Run a search for any property purchases or long-term rentals under his name, or known aliases between 2003 and 2010. He'll have left a trail. By late afternoon, a hit came back. In 2005, a man named Leonard Schaefer, one letter different, purchased a foreclosed farmhouse in Tillamook County, 40 miles inland. The property was listed as uninhabitable. No utilities, heavy renovation required. No building permits filed. No inspection records, just a deed transfer and silence. Ruiz assembled a team. FBI, county sheriffs, forensic unit. They drove out that evening. The farmhouse sat at the end of a gravel road, surrounded by overgrown fields and dense forest. Windows boarded. Roof sagging. No signs of recent activity. But when they approached the front door, Torres noticed something. Fresh scratches around the lock. Recent, within days, maybe hours. They breached the door. Inside, the smell hit first. Mildew, decay, something chemical underneath. The main floor was empty, stripped bare, but the stairs leading down to the basement were newer, recently reinforced. Ruiz descended slowly, flashlight cutting through the dark. At the bottom, a hallway. Narrow, low ceiling. And at the end, a steel door with a deadbolt on the outside. She unlocked it. The door swung open. Inside, a small room, maybe 8 by 10 feet. A cot against one wall, a bucket in the corner, and scratched into every surface. Walls, floor, ceiling, names, dozens of them. Some Ruiz recognized from the ledger. Others were new. At the center of the floor, written in what looked like charcoal. He comes every 3 days, brings food, doesn't speak, just watches. Torres stepped inside, carefully photographing every inch. Bruce scanned the names again, her flashlight pausing on one near the bottom right corner of the wall, fresher than the others. Natalie Voss, 2023. Bruce's stomach dropped. She radioed Morse. We need a welfare check. Natalie Voss, now. Records showed Natalie Voss, age 29, had been reported missing by her sister in October 2023. Last seen renting a cabin near Astoria for a solo writing retreat. No activity on her credit cards. No phone signal. Case was still open. Minimal leads. Ruiz stared at the name on the wall. If she'd been here, if she'd scratched that message, she might still be alive. They searched the rest of the farmhouse. In the attic, they found more ledgers, more photos, and a map, a detailed hand-drawn map of the Oregon coast, marked with red dots. Each dot corresponded to a property Schiff had owned, managed, or accessed. There were 11 total. Only 3 had been searched so far. March 11th, 2024. Location: Astoria, Oregon. FBI teams hit the remaining properties simultaneously. Most were empty. But at a small rental cottage 6 miles outside Astoria, they found signs of recent habitation, food wrappers dated within the last month, a sleeping bag in the closet, and in the crawl space beneath the kitchen, a trapdoor leading to a hidden basement room identical to the one in Tillamook. Inside, they found Natalie Voss, alive, malnourished, dehydrated, barely conscious, but alive. She was rushed to the hospital. Ruiz stayed behind, walking through the cottage, trying to piece together how Schiff had maintained this for so long. In the bedroom closet, she found a duffel bag. Inside, clothes, a razor, a bottle of prescription medication made out to Leonard Schiff, and a notebook. The notebook was recent. Entries from 2023 and 2024. Schiff's handwriting, neat and precise. Most entries were mundane. Grocery lists, weather observations. But one entry, dated February 18, 2024, stood out. The storm will expose driftwood. I need to retrieve the camcorder before they find it. If they find it, they'll find everything. Ruiz flipped forward. The last entry was dated March 8, 2024. The architect found it. The tape, the walls, all of it. They're searching the other properties now. I can't go back. Time to disappear for good. But I'm not finished. There's still one they haven't found. Ruiz read it twice. One they haven't found. She called Morse immediately. He's talking about another victim, someone still hidden. Morse was silent for a moment. Then, check the map. If there's an 11th property and we've only searched 8, there are still 3 locations. Ruiz pulled out the map from the farmhouse. 2 properties were marked near the California border. The third was inland, near the town of Vernonia, marked with a double circle, beneath it, in small letters, the first, March 12, 2024. Location: Vernonia, Oregon. The property was a hunting cabin, isolated, accessible only by a logging road that hadn't been maintained in years. The team arrived at dawn. The cabin was small, 1 room, no electricity, no running water, but behind it, partially hidden by blackberry bushes, was a storage shed. The door was padlocked from the outside. They cut the lock. Inside, darkness. Torres entered first, flashlight sweeping the space. The shed was deeper than it looked, extending back into the hillside. At the far end, a tarp covered something large. She pulled it back, underneath, a wooden crate, roughly the size of a coffin. Her hands trembled as she pried it open. Inside, bones, human remains, partially preserved by the cool, dry air. Beside them, a wallet. Ruiz opened it carefully. The driver's license showed a young woman, blonde, smiling, named Jennifer Calloway. Date of birth, March 3, 1975. Reported missing June 1996. Ruiz closed her eyes. The first, forensic analysis confirmed it. Jennifer Calloway had been Schiff's first victim, held for weeks, possibly months, before she died. The shed had been his initial experiment, the prototype for everything that came after. By the time he'd refined his methods, built his hidden corridors, his observation rooms, he'd already perfected the isolation, the control, the waiting. But Schiff himself remained missing. Roadblocks were set up, airports monitored. His photo circulated to every law enforcement agency in the Pacific Northwest, and then, on March 14th, a ranger in the Law National Forest called in a report. A man matching Schiff's description had been seen near a remote campground, living out of a van, keeping to himself. When officers arrived, they found the van abandoned. Engine cold, inside, They found maps, more ledgers, and a handwritten note taped to the steering wheel. "You'll never understand what I built. It was beautiful. They were safe with me, safer than they ever were out there." Ruiz stood beside the van, reading the note. Her jaw tight, beautiful, safe. The delusion was complete, but the search wasn't over. March 16th, 2024. Location: Sisha's Law National Forest, Oregon. The search dogs picked up a trail 2 miles from the abandoned van. It led deeper into the forest, away from marked paths, toward a ridge overlooking the Sisha's Law River. Ruiz followed with a team of 6 officers, weapons drawn, moving carefully through the underbrush. The trail ended at the edge of a cliff. No body, no footprints leading away. Just a leather jacket draped over a fallen log, weighted down with a rock. In the jacket pocket, a folded piece of paper. Ruiz unfolded it. Another note. This one longer, written in the same neat handwriting. "I knew it would end this way. Not with handcuffs, but with silence. You think you've won because you found them, because you opened the walls and let the light in, but you didn't save anyone. They were mine long before you arrived. Emily, Marcus, Rachel, Jennifer, all of them. They belong to the spaces I created. You've destroyed those spaces, but you can't destroy what I built inside them. That will last forever." The note was signed with a single initial. La. Agent Morse reviewed the scene later that afternoon. "No body means no confirmation," he said. "But the drop here is 200 feet, straight down to rocks and water. If he went over, we might never recover him." Ruiz stared at the river below, churning white and fast from recent rain. "Or he wants us to think he's dead." Morse nodded slowly. Back in Cannon Beach, David Ortega stood in front of the empty lot where the cabin had been. The structure had been demolished the week before, burned down to the foundation, then bulldozed. The land was being cleared for sale, though no buyers had expressed interest yet. Too much history, too much darkness. David had watched the fire from the road, the flames climbing into the night sky, consuming the walls that had held so many secrets. He felt relief, but also something heavier. Grief, maybe. Or guilt. For not knowing sooner. For buying a place where people had suffered. A few days later, he received a package at his Portland apartment. No return address. Inside, a small brown journal. Water-stained, pages brittle. A note was taped to the cover. "Found this in the rubble. Thought you should have it." It was unsigned. David opened the journal carefully. The handwriting was Emily Chen's. The same script from the notebook found in her backpack. But these entries were different. Earlier. Hopeful. July 20th, 2000. 2 days until our trip. Marcus surprised me with a cabin rental on the coast. He said we need to reconnect, away from work, away from everything. I can't wait. Just the 2 of us. The ocean. No distractions. David turned the pages slowly, reading about their drive up the coast, their first night in the cabin, the fire Marcus built, the wine they shared. The entries were full of laughter, small observations, moments of joy. And then, July 24th, the tone shifted. Something feels wrong. I can't explain it. The cabin is beautiful, but it doesn't feel safe. Last night, I woke up and thought I saw someone standing in the hallway, but when I turned on the light, no one was there. Marcus thinks I'm being paranoid. Maybe I am, but I keep hearing sounds, like footsteps, like breathing behind the walls. The final entry was dated July 26, written in a rushed, shaky hand. "We're trapped, he locked us in. I don't know who he is or what he wants, but he's been watching us. I can feel it. We found a way into the crawl space. We're going to try to get out tonight. If we don't make it, if someone finds this, please tell our families we love them. Tell them we fought." David closed the journal and sat in silence. Then he did what Emily had asked. He contacted the Chen family. March 22nd, 2024. Location: Eugene, Oregon. Emily's parents, Robert and Linda Chen, met with Detective Ruiz in their living room. They were both in their 70s now. Grayer, slower, but their grief was as fresh as it had been 24 years ago. Linda held it with both hands, tears streaming down her face. Robert read the entries aloud, his voice breaking on the final page. When he finished, he looked up at Ruiz. "Did she suffer?" Ruiz chose her words carefully. "The evidence suggests they survived for at least 9 days. They tried to escape. They tried to call for help. Emily was strong. She didn't give up." Linda wiped her eyes, but she didn't make it out. Ruiz hesitated. "We haven't found her remains, or Marcus's. The investigation is still open." Robert set the journal on the coffee table, so they could still be out there. Ruiz met his gaze. "It's possible. Schiff had 11 properties. We've searched all of them, but there could be others we don't know about. We're continuing to look." Linda's voice was barely a whisper. "You'll keep looking." Ruiz nodded. "I promise." Over the following weeks, forensic teams combed through the remains of every property connected to Leonard Schiff. They found more evidence, more names, more victims. Some were identified. Others remained unknown. But no trace of Emily or Marcus Chen, no bodies, no personal effects beyond what had already been recovered. It was as if they'd vanished into the walls themselves. Then, in early April, a hiker in the Coast Range found something unusual: a backpack buried beneath a pile of leaves near an old logging road. Inside, a driver's license for Marcus Chen, a wedding ring engraved with Emily's initials, and a camcorder tape different from the one found at the cabin. The tape was badly damaged, but the lab managed to recover fragments. The footage showed Emily and Marcus, filthy, exhausted, crawling through a dark tunnel. Marcus held the camera, his breath ragged. "We're under the cabin. We found a way out through the crawl space. If we can reach the woods, we can get help." The camera jostled, went dark, then flickered back on. They were outside now, moving through trees, moonlight barely visible through the canopy. Emily's voice, urgent. "He's following us. I can hear him." The camera swung around, caught a glimpse of a figure in the distance, flashlight beam cutting through the dark, then the tape cut out. Ruiz played it 3 times, then called Morse. They got out. At least for a while. Morse was quiet. But they didn't make it to safety. Ruiz stared at the frozen frame. Emily's face turned toward the camera, fear and determination in her eyes. He caught them. The search shifted to the forest surrounding the cabin site. Cadaver dogs, ground-penetrating radar, thermal imaging. After 2 weeks, they found something. A shallow grave, 300 yards from the cabin, hidden beneath blackberry brambles and forest debris. Inside, 2 bodies, decomposed, but identifiable through dental records. Emily and Marcus Chen. They'd been buried together, side by side. The autopsy revealed they'd died from blunt force trauma, likely within hours of their escape attempt. Schiff had tracked them, caught them, and brought them back. But he hadn't hidden them in the walls. He'd buried them in the earth, as if even he couldn't bear to keep them in the spaces he'd built. Ruiz attended the funeral. It was small, private, just family and close friends. She stood at the back, watching as Emily's parents laid flowers on the caskets, their faces hollow with grief, but also, finally, with closure. After the service, Linda Chen approached her. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for not giving up." Ruiz nodded, unable to speak. May 1st, 2024. Location: Lincoln County Sheriff's Office, Newport, Oregon. The case officially closed. Leonard Schiff was listed as deceased, presumed dead by suicide, though no body was ever recovered. 9 victims were confirmed across his properties. 3 survived, including Natalie Voss, who was slowly recovering in a care facility. The rest were gone, their names added to a memorial erected near the Cannon Beach site where the cabin once stood. David Ortega attended the memorial dedication. He'd sold the land to the county for $1, with the stipulation that it never be developed. It would remain empty. a place for remembering. He stood beside Ruiz as the plaque was unveiled, listing the names of the victims, the known and the unknown. At the bottom, an inscription. They were not forgotten. They will not be forgotten. That evening, Ruiz returned to her office one last time to file the final reports. As she closed the Chen case file, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Static, breathing. Then a voice, faint, distorted. You found them, but you didn't find me. The line went dead. Ruiz stared at the phone, her pulse racing. She tried to trace the call, but it was routed through multiple networks, untraceable. She sat back in her chair, staring at the evidence board still pinned to her wall, Schiff's photo at the center. Dead or still out there. She didn't know, but she knew one thing. The case might be closed on paper, but it wasn't over. June 15th, 2024. Location, unknown. A man sat in a small room, windowless, walls covered in blueprints and photographs. He traced a line on one of the maps, marking a new location, a new property. His handwriting was neat, precise. At the bottom of the page, he wrote a single word. Next. He'd waited long enough. The heat had died down. The attention had shifted elsewhere. It was time to start again. Not in Oregon this time, somewhere new. Somewhere no one would think to look. He folded the map carefully and placed it in a drawer. Then he stood, turned off the light, and disappeared into the dark. Months later, in a small coastal town in Northern California, a young couple checked into a rental cottage. Charming, secluded, perfect for a weekend getaway. They unpacked their bags, opened a bottle of wine, and settled in for the night. Neither of them noticed the faint scratches on the bathroom mirror, or the small camera lens hidden in the heating vent, or the narrow gap behind the bedroom wall where someone, somewhere, was watching and waiting. If someone you know has gone missing under similar circumstances, or if you've stayed in a rental property with unusual features like hidden panels, false walls, or unexplained sounds, trust your instincts and report it to local authorities immediately.